皆さん、こんにちは。ようこそ、ピクセブワコン主催のドローフェス4にお越しいただきありがとうございます。Greetings everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us at Drawfest4, powered by Pixiv and Wacom. 私は司会者兼通訳のメラニーです。本日はよろしくお願いします。I'm your host and interpreter Melanie. Thank you for joining us today. 河合先生の講義を見た方、英語吹き替え版を見た方はもしかして私の声聞いたかもしれないですよ。If you watched the Kawaii Sensei program in English, maybe you heard my voice earlier, so thank you very much for watching that. 今回では4回目となるこのドローフェスは人気クリエイターから絵の描き方や創作テクニックを学べるイベントとなっています。今回のドローフェスはスタディデーとフィードバックデーに分けて開催します。This is the fourth installment of Drawfest, an event where popular creators explain some of their tips and techniques for drawing and creating various works of art.This time, Drawfest has been divided into Study Day and Feedback Day. 視聴者の皆さんは Study Day で登壇者から学んだ内容を活かして1週間の間に作品制作と Pixiv への投稿を行っていただきます。Audiences are encouraged to take what they learned from the lecturer at today's Study Day, use it to create their own artwork, and post it on Pixiv throughout the upcoming week.フィードバックデーでは登壇者が投稿作品の紹介や改善点などのアドバイスを行い、プログラムごとに受賞作品を選出します。During Feedback Day, our lecturer will introduce a few entries and offer advice on areas to improve on. Winning entries will also be selected for each program. 受賞者の方には商品として教材のワコムや登壇者からWacom をはじめとする豪華商品が贈呈されます。Winners will receive a Wacom One pen display courtesy of our co-organizer Wacom. Other wonderful prizes courtesy of our lecturers will be given out as well. みんなぜひ積極的にご参加ください。Everyone is encouraged to participate. じゃあちょっと SNS の説明させていただきます。I'm going to talk a little bit about our social media regulations now.イベントを盛り上げるために皆さんにお願いがございます。ハッシュタグは YouTube の概要欄に記載しています。ぜひプログラムの感想や投稿作品のメイキングは Twitter でイベントハッシュタグの Drawfest4 をつけて、Pixiv には各プログラムのタグをつけて制作した作品を投稿してください。We'd like to ask all of you for your cooperation to help make this event a raging success.Feel free to share your opinions and impressions of our programs and your creation processes via Twitter, along with the hashtag Drawfest4, and upload your finished creations to Pixiv with the specific hashtag cited in the description of each program. And you may be able to receive feedback from the lecturer. 視聴 URL は参加登録した方限定での提供となりますので、視聴 URL はつけずにご投稿ください。また気になったことや登壇者への質問は YouTube のチャットでのお願いします。So links to our content were only provided to those who pre-registered, so please do not include the links in your posts. Also, if you have any particular questions for the lecturer, please feel free to post them in the live chat. プログラムの最後に登壇者への質問の時間もございます。たくさんの質問をお待ちしています。Ample time has been allotted during the program to allow for questions for our lecturer, so please feel free to post them. We're looking forward to hearing from you. それでは皆さんで盛り上がっていきましょう。So let's all have a great time together. 早速3つ目のプログラムに参りましょう。So without any further ado, let's get this show on the road. 3つ目のプログラムはオギポテとアニメ塗り会でVshojo ironmouseを描こうです。Our third program is Let's Draw Vshojo's Iron Mouse with Ogipote's Anime-Style Coloring version 2.0. 本プログラムでは VTuber グループ Vshojo のアイアンマウスさんをイラストレーターオギポテさんと視聴者の皆さんで書くプログラムです。オギポテさんが得意な陰影とエフェクトを生かした単調にならないアニメ塗りの極意、ストーリーを詰め込んだイラストの描き方を学びます。In this program, our lecturer Ogipote will color Iron Mouse from the VTuber group Vshojo, along with everyone watching at home. Ogipote is especially skilled at using shadows and other effects in his anime-style coloring technique that is anything but monotone. Let's learn how to create art that tells a story in this program. 参考資料のオギポテさんが描かれたアイアンマウスの線画とアイアンマウスキャラクターデザイン資料は 説明欄のリンクからダウンロードできます。The download link for Line Art of ironmouse that Ogipote drew and ironmouse's character design reference sheet can be found in the description box. Now, let's start the program with our lecturer, Ogipote. それでは、Ogipote さんによるプログラムのスタートです。
Ogipote、新潟県出身在住イラストレーター。二次元イラスト関係で多方面にわたり活動中。アニメ風タッチを基調に空気感の演出にこだわり、儚い一種の切り取ったような臨場感の中にある少女の可愛さを探求。Ogipote is an illustrator based in Niigata, Japan, who is currently involved in a wide variety of projects related to 2D illustration.Ogipote's work incorporates an anime-style aesthetic, and the attention to fine details to build atmosphere creates the effect of realistic, sweet snapshots from the lives of young girls.
いやー、本日は 2D モデルでご参加いただきます。He's joining us with a special 2D avatar today. Ogipote さんよろしくお願いします。
はい、皆さん、こんにちは。オギポテです。よろしくお願いいたします。
今回の 2D モデルすごく可愛いですよ。美少女の上に大仏がいます。So your model is very cute, Ogipote. The Buddha is on top of the very beautiful girl. 何かコンセプトがありましたか？どうやって作成しましたか？
ありがとうございます。これ、実は僕のチャンネルが、お絵かきラボという、名前をつけてまして、要はお絵かきのことを研究するみたいなので、一応やってるんですけど、それで下の子は助手というコンセプトで、上の仏像の頭が僕の本体となっております。
So, actually, Ogipote has a YouTube channel called Oekaki Lab or Doodling Lab.And this Buddha that's on top of the girl is actually his real form, but he's kind of also acting as the girl as well. ありがとうございます。すごく可愛いですよ。特にカーテンの動きもすごいです。It's very cute, and I really like the curtain moving in the background.
ありがとうございます。カーテンも無理やりつけてもらいました。ありがとうございます。
I did my best to add it on. So, yeah, okay. Thank you very much. So, よろしくお願いします。今日、オギポテさんから学んだテクニックを使って、アイアンマスさんの絵を描いていただくわけですが、そのご本人のアイアンマスさんから視聴者の皆さんへメッセージ映像を届いています。So today, we are going to be using techniques we learned from Ogipote to color in an illustration of Iron Mouse. But we've also received a special video message from the VTuber herself.Let's watch. それではご覧ください。どうぞ。オラオラ
オリ Hello! It is I, Satan! Or known as Iron Mouse. Hello, I am a Puerto Rican American VTuber on Twitch that loves to hang out with her friends. I love to play games and I love to sing. Singing is my passion, so I love to do it often. I'm so honored for all of you to draw me today. A little bit about my lore. I am a demon queen from hell who lives in the human world with my familiar, Booby, right here. Yeah. I have many forms, including an angel form, a demon form, a pink rock form, my racing princess form, and a lot more. But the model you will be drawing with Ogipote today is my demon princess / queen model, originally illustrated from Rosary. In this form, I have to wear my bell to limit my power. So you can see I have my bell here around my neck. It's very important. I don't think I have any bells on me anywhere else, just around my neck, just to keep me in check with my powers. My hair will always have purple highlights on the left-hand side, right here. I always have my purple highlights in my hair. And I always have hearts in my hair. My heart hair clips are very important to me, and I always like to wear my heart hair clips on all the time. I really like hearts a lot. I don't know if you can tell. Oh, also, I always have a tail. See? And I always have wings. I always have wings on my back. Double wings on my back. I have wings on my head. And I have wings on my feet. On my feet. Yeah. Oh, also, important to note, another piece that's important is my ahoge, my heart ahoge. Always, I always have a heart ahoge on my head, and always with one earring on. I don't know why I like one earring only. I think it looks cute with one earring. Why? You don't need two earrings. I would say those have to be the key parts of my character. In addition to being tsundere. You know, it's not like I care or anything. Thank you very much, and I appreciate all of you. Thank you. Have fun drawing me. Bye.
アヤンマウスさんからもポイントの説明があったところで、ここからは早速オギポテさんと一緒にプログラムを進めたいと思います。So thank you very much for the advice, Iron Mouse. Now let's get started with Ogipote's program. プログラムの後、皆さんからのご質問にお答えしたいと思いますので、番組の最中でも気になったことは YouTube のチャットをお願いします。So after the lecture, we're going to have time to answer questions. So please leave a comment in the live chat if you want to have your question answered. チャットにも誰かが現れるかもしれないよ。There might also be somebody special in the chat waiting for you. I mean, Ogipote sensei may be in the chat. So please feel free to answer. オギポテ先生はチャットに現れるかもしれないので、ぜひ、ご自由に質問聞いてください。はい、もう早速行きましょう。Enjoy! それではご覧ください。どうぞ。
どうぞ。
I'm Ogipote. Today I'll be talking about anime style coloring. Basically, it's a coloring style where the shadows are well defined by using two different shades for the base color and the shadow color. I mainly draw illustrations of beautiful girls in this style. The artwork you're looking at now is a typical piece of mine. Although it looks similar to a screenshot of an anime scene, it's an illustration. So there are things that I've done to add a strong sense of depth and express more within the illustration. So in this tutorial, I'd like to talk about the techniques I use that differentiate my illustrations from the drawings used in animation. I'll also talk about what I did to achieve my own artistic identity. Let's get started. First, I'd like to explain why I enjoy anime-style coloring the most among the various coloring techniques, which also include the softer Gal game style, watercolor, and impasto. One important reason is that I just really like the way shadows are rendered in anime. When I thought about why I'm drawn to this art style, I realized that the simplicity of the anime style serves as a solid foundation for storytelling and capturing the atmosphere. It also makes it easy to integrate various effects from a technical point of view. I've learned to appreciate these aspects through practical experience. Personally, I find this an excellent format for conveying atmosphere, storytelling, and the passage of time. I've tried other coloring styles, but anime style coloring works best for what I want to do, so it's the one I use. In anime production, people like animators, cinematographers, special effects artists, background artists, and musicians work together as a team within a company to create the final product. Since anime are essentially movies, there's a lot of work that goes into them, and I had to think about how my illustrations could compete against a creation like that with such a comprehensive production. Just to be clear, I don't see the world of anime as a rival or anything. I just mean that I approach my illustrations with the goal of telling a story like a movie, even though I'm not making a movie or an anime. As I thought about how to make illustrations like that, I realized that I had to be able to do everything myself, including effects, backgrounds, and characters, so I started practicing all of those things. I developed my current art style through trial and error. Please keep in mind that this is just how I do things. I hope you can learn something from it and find something that you can incorporate and adapt into your own art style, not unlike a spy gathering information to be used at their discretion later. Before we begin, you should know that this current audio is dubbed. During the screen recording, I just focused on drawing and added a voiceover later. I know not everyone likes that, but that's what I've done for today. Thank you for your understanding. In this tutorial, I'll be focusing on a particular artwork of mine that I find easy to explain and understand, especially when it comes to how I use shading and highlighting. I'll also be going through how I use effects. So, I had the chance to work with the popular VTuber ironmouse. Ironmouse's character design is amazing, and I was trying to figure out how to explain my own style without changing the essence of the original design. I came up with this rough sketch for my own reference, putting down all the ideas I had here. From this point on, I'll refine the rough sketch, but I'm not going to talk about that in detail. As I already mentioned, this tutorial will focus on coloring. Here's the final result. How does it compare to your own sketches? Mine's pretty messy, but I'm showing it to you anyway so you can see my process. Now, let's move on to the line art. My technique for drawing the line art isn't anything special, so feel free to draw it in any way you want. I'm not particular about line art, so just think of this as one possible method among many. Here I'm going through the purely mechanical process of separating the colors and layers. Be careful not to leave any gaps when using the bucket tool to fill in the colors. If you don't feel comfortable starting from scratch and coming up with your own drawing to color, this line art is available for download if you want to follow along with this tutorial. Now, let's dive right into the coloring process. For the sake of clarity, I'll call the standard way of coloring that you see a lot in anime, basic anime style coloring. I've tried other coloring styles, but anime style coloring version 2.0 works best for what I want to do, so it's the one I use. I'm just using this terminology to make things easier to understand. It's not an official name or anything. First and foremost, I'd like everyone to understand the concept of shadow. What comes to mind when you hear the word shadow? In fact, there are two different kinds of shadows: form shadows and cast shadows. Form shadows are pretty common in basic anime style coloring. I'm a big fan of anime, and I've watched a crazy amount of it. Anime is more than just drawings. It's a moving visual experience. It takes a lot of work. Not only are they animating the characters of the story, but they have to animate the backgrounds as well. When it comes to the cast shadow of a moving character, it's important to keep it as simple as possible and think about how it will look combined with other effects. For example, there are times when a character moves quickly from a dark place to a bright one. In such cases, it's better to use a versatile and adaptable form shadow that doesn't need specific changes in color or shape every time. Now I'd like to go into more detail about form shadows. Sorry about the hand-drawn diagram. Please look at these shapes for a moment. This one here is a form shadow. This blue part here. If we take an arm, for example, the form shadow will follow the contours of its three-dimensional shape, as shown in the previous diagram. It's easier to understand if you compare them. This is the resulting form shadow. For solid objects, the form shadow will appear on the side of the object, which is opposite to where the light comes from. Pretty clear, I think. This is how things work in basic anime style coloring. Form shadows are used in anime like this a lot. In some cases, this type of shadow may be the only one used to keep things as simple as possible. I add depth and visual information by adding the other types of shadows, specifically cast shadows. This is one of my little secrets. Let me show you what I mean with the diagram. The part in red represents the so-called cast shadow, which, as the name suggests, is a shadow cast by an object. Cast shadows are also used in basic anime style coloring, although it's not usually a priority to be thorough in adding them. For example, character heads are quite prominent in any anime, so it's pretty common to show a dark cast shadow under the neck. Basically, what I'm saying is that it's not 100% one or the other. Basic anime style coloring uses both form shadows and cast shadows. However, my style conveys a higher level of visual information by incorporating more of these cast shadows. They even add a little bit of originality, I guess. For now, let's start by adding form shadows to all parts of the illustration. I'm going to start coloring quickly. I'll walk you through the important parts, so please follow along. I'm probably in the chat, so text me if you have any questions. Okay, let's keep going for now. As I said earlier, in basic anime style coloring, form shadows are often simplified to make it easy to add effects and still have the end product look good. To make them more versatile, I add a slightly muted color to the base color of the skin, making sure it blends well. As for the layer, I'm using the normal blending mode. I will give a short explanation about colors as well. In my anime style coloring version 2.0, I also make small changes to the color of the form shadow. This makes sense because unlike in basic anime style coloring, the goal here is to get the best skin color for our finished illustration. I'll adjust the colors later, but for now, I'm applying the form shadow color in places that resemble the style of basic anime style coloring. I'm also using a color similar to what is typically seen in traditional anime. Actually, I would usually apply these using a slightly different shade. However, since this is a digital illustration, the color of the form shadow can be changed later. For now, just pick any color you like. Does that make sense? I've run out of things to say. Should I give you some more time? Maybe I should say some random things here. Are you all done coloring the skin? Oh, that looks good. Nice job. Still working on it? Next, I use the airbrush to add a soft, light blush to the cheeks. This is something commonly seen in anime as well. But since this is an illustration, I add a touch of blush to places like the fingertips or parts that are slightly flush to make the character look even cuter. Of course, those who want a cooler look can skip this step and go with their own style. This is the result. This is just my personal preference, but unless I'm going for a cooler look, I believe the rosier the cheeks, the cuter the character looks. I usually draw manga style blushing lines on the cheeks too, but since we're covering basic anime style coloring, I skipped this step for now and will show it later. Now, let's move on to the hair. At this stage, people who are paying attention may have already noticed that the areas where I'm adding form shadows are subtly indicated in the line art. Can you spot the places that are calling for a form shadow? Animators also have a tendency to indicate where to put shading before the coloring stage. You can find some examples if you search for anime keyframes. That has influenced me to subconsciously put similar indicators into my line art. Being able to plan ahead and think, would it look good if I added a form shadow here, has its advantages. With practice, you might be able to do the same. If you're using my line art and finding the process surprisingly simple, it could be because of this secret trick. But I also put form shadows in places where there are no lines, so you should be flexible and add more shadows as needed. Ironmouse has bicolor hair with shades of purple. You can separate the colors however you like. I'll start by adding the overall form shadows and then paint the separate colors for the bicolor here. To achieve this effect, I apply shades of blue and purple on a multiply layer. I don't always do this. I use different methods for each illustration, so you can also adapt the process to suit your needs from illustration to illustration. You may have noticed that I accidentally added a cast shadow that would better suit my anime style coloring version 2.0 technique. I caught the mistake right away and fixed it though. Just ignore that little blip. But most of the time, I put both kinds of shadows on the same layer. I usually work on both the form shadows and the cast shadows at the same time, but this time I broke the process into separate steps to make it easier to understand. To be honest, I'm a little surprised by how well this is going, so I might try this method again in the future. I'm going to add the colors. As I already said, you can use whatever method you like as long as you've got the bicolor aspect down. For this part 2, I'm proceeding according to basic anime style coloring and adding simple highlights that are often seen in anime, but I'll add my own style of highlights later. Shading is the main focus of this tutorial, so this part about highlights, eyes, and embracing your own art style might not be as useful as a reference. For now, I'll add these highlights. The eyes are probably the part of an illustration that best showcases the artist's style, so you should draw them the way you like. As a side note, you need to be careful with the placement of highlights in relation to the direction the character is looking. Now I'm putting the highlights on the left side, but putting them on the right side would change the character's look and give her a totally different impression. There's no right or wrong, but for this illustration, I chose this side because the character is winking in this direction. Just something to keep in mind. Next, let's move on to the clothes. The process is the same. Out of habit, I accidentally added some cast shadows again, but please ignore that again. I'm mostly just giving the clothes some simple form shadows. I'm mainly adding shading in the style of anime style coloring. Some people might say that this doesn't look at all like anime because some color tones and shadows were added at the line art stage, but at a glance, the overall illustration should look like an anime keyframe. I'll also show you a before and after comparison, so even if you can't quite see it now, you'll have a better image of it seeing them side by side. So, how is it going? Are you adding shadows to the clothes? I've started painting the pink parts of the outfit, just as I did with the hair and skin. I'm using a slightly desaturated color, giving it an animated movie-like feel. I'm going to use a soft shade of pink here. I believe we've reached a point where we could start adding effects or even animate what we've got, which means we should all be just about done with the basic anime style coloring. How are all of you doing? Ironmouse's character design has a lot of detail, with some part of her clothes looking a little see-through and intricate details on her earrings. However, since the tutorial won't focus on such details, I've simplified them into heart shapes to make it easier for everyone to work with. If you decide to create fan art, please refer to the awesome original design since the illustration I'm using here isn't strictly accurate to the original. Next, I'll add some shadows and highlights to the smaller details. These touches on her fingertips make her look very cute. Let's try adding a little gradation like this. Here we go, we're all done with the foam shadows that are often used in basic anime style coloring. What do you think? The line art was already very detailed, so you might be wondering how we're going to brush it up even further from here. That'll become clear once we add some cast shadows. Following my 2.0 approach, I'll start adding cast shadows. Putting the previous explanation on hold for a moment, take a look at this diagram. Oh, sorry. I feel like her clothes could use some more detail, so I'm going to add some floral textures here and there. You can use your own textures if you want, but that's not the point of this tutorial, so let's move on. Going back to the diagram, as you can see, I've added the shadows in blue. Compare the blue section with the top left figure, and you'll see that we're finished adding the form shadows opposite to where the light hits. Next, we'll add the shadows in red. In the diagram, the red areas represent the cast shadows, created when objects block the light that falls on other objects. For now, I'm just roughly marking their positions. Let's move on. What do you think? Here you can see where the cast shadows will fall. You might be wondering, where exactly should these shadows go? Simply put, since the character in this case has long hair and we want to give the impression of movement, we want the hair to look light and bouncy. So we're going to add some cast shadows under her bangs, or under the unswept part of her hair. Makes it much easier to figure out the proper placement, doesn't it? If you don't keep this in mind, it's easy to forget some shadows along the way. So that's why I decided to include a tutorial on this particular technique. I hope it helps you hone your skills. Cast shadows will also fall here, especially under the outstretched hand in the foreground. Assuming the light is shining from above, you can imagine that the shadows spread out like this, getting bigger and bigger. I kinda said this already, but the light source is very important. At the moment, I'm using a simple studio lighting setup with the light coming from above in the foreground, which creates cast shadows like these, but feel free to change the position of the light source. Although there may be some slight differences, the basic form shadows aren't much influenced by the position of the light source. On the other hand, the red cast shadows I use in my 2.0 approach are greatly influenced by where the light is coming from. I recommend you consider the direction of the light source from the start and ask yourself which side the light is coming from. Cast shadows don't have to fall exactly the way I've presented them here. There are a lot of interesting variations that can be created of a single picture depending on where the light is coming from. I'll continue adding some cast shadows like this. Can you see the difference between the blue form shadows and the red cast shadows? Even the stray hairs have their own shadows, which is easy to forget. You can see how much detail we managed to pack in this illustration just by following these steps. I'll work a little more on the cast shadows and then move on to coloring. Finally, we'll get started on my 2.0 method for anime style coloring. I'll start with the hair, which makes things easier. Shadows fall like this, right? Since hair grows in a vertical direction, you might be hesitant to add shadows horizontally, but the outcome looks pretty natural, doesn't it? My goal here is to give the illustration a sense of depth. By adding one more layer of depth to basic anime style coloring and painting cast shadows in the spaces between the hair, it's easier to grasp the detail of the artwork, its atmosphere, space, and direction. Let's keep adding more shadows. Now that the hair is all set, let's move on to the skin. We'll add shadows where they make sense, following my 2.0 approach to anime style coloring. There's one thing in particular that I'm mindful of. I don't just add shadows randomly. I think about the balance of the illustration and try to avoid adding too many shadows because it might make the final result look too dark. When adding the two types of shadows to an arm, for example, if the form shadow is too large, the arm will appear flat and unbalanced. So I made it smaller this time. As we take on my anime style coloring version 2.0, we can sometimes reduce the amount of form shadows and adjust that of cast shadows. I'll go over these techniques in more detail later. Other times, however, we may need to increase the amount of form shadows to achieve the desired balance. How many form shadows to add is a matter of personal taste and preference. In my case, I thought the fingertips could use some more, so I filled in this area halfway. Still, her fingers ended up looking a bit flat. When aiming for a balanced look with the ample cast shadows while avoiding a flat appearance, I often use the eraser to remove some of the lower part shadows in order to render bounce light and highlight the details and shapes. The cast shadows I added to the left side of her hair are an example of this. I used the eraser to render bounce light and bring out the details. For those wondering what bounce light means, try placing a shiny object like an iron ball or an apple on a bright table in a well-lit room. You will notice that the overhead light reflects on the top of the apple, and if you put the apple on a white table, the table will reflect onto the bottom of the apple, creating a slightly whitish area. That's bounce light. You could also call it reflected light. So this is how I render bounce light. Smooth surfaces, like the character's skin and hair, in this case, tend to be better at reflecting light. Looks pretty natural, doesn't it? The same goes for metal surfaces. The eyes are the part that has the most shine. Although I haven't included it in this tutorial, If you look closely, you'll see that I use different effects and reflections in the eyes. You should learn about eye structure at some point, as it'll help you expand your range of expression. Figure out what parts should reflect the light, what counts as bounce light and what doesn't, and understand the concept of refraction. Did you know that the transparent jelly-like substance covering the eye refracts light, changing the way eyes appear? It's fascinating. Let's keep going. We'll continue adding cast shadows in the same way. It's starting to look like one of my illustrations, isn't it? Earlier, during the basic anime style coloring stage, I added some geometric highlights, but I hid them for a while. These geometric highlights look too stiff on fine shadows, so I changed them to make fine, textured highlights that follow the flow of individual hair strands. You can draw them however you want. What do you think? To get a balanced three-dimensional effect, I'm adding bounce light and reflections in some key areas. Finally, let's finish the hair. I like to add individual hair strands that look somewhat like split ends using a layer for lightening colors, such as linear dodge or burn. This way you can give the illustration a certain kind of lightness and cheer. Here's how I add the finishing touches to the hair. I'm using techniques that reflect my personal aesthetic. From here, I'll introduce some more of my techniques. Even though they don't usually teach you this, I tend to break the line art on purpose in some places. The subtle changes on the screen may be difficult to notice, but if you look closely, you'll see that I erased a small part of the line art where the hand rests on the cheek. As a result, the overall artwork softens and gains a sense of movement. I usually do this when there's not much difference in color between adjacent areas. Line art doesn't usually stand out when it's used where two significantly different colors come together. On the other hand, lines between two light colors tend to stand out more. A line like that can seem too harsh, so I intentionally break the line to achieve a sense of softness. I have added the overall cast shadows to the entire illustration following my 2.0 approach to anime style coloring. How does it look? Let's compare it to how it looked during the basic anime style coloring stage and see how much it has changed. There's a big difference, right? This was all made possible just by adding cast shadows, which are often overlooked. But some of you may say, there are no objects in my drawings that can cast shadows. That's a very good point. Although I do it unconsciously most of the time, when drawing cast shadows to create a sense of depth, you also have to consider the objects that will cast those shadows. During the line art and composition stages, for example, I make the hair bouncy on purpose and place things in the foreground or background. This is crucial. Pay attention to these details if you want to create a three-dimensional effect with cast shadows. It may sound hard, but just think how much your artwork can change just by keeping this minor detail in mind. Quite a change, isn't it? However, my take on anime style coloring version 2.0 doesn't end here. If you allow me a little digression, I'll briefly talk about some other things I do. In this illustration, I made the colors of the shadows stand out by making them bright and intense. Even though it may seem obvious, an illustration is more powerful and more memorable the more contrast it has. Another method is to use lighter colors that don't pop but still express the same contrast in a gentler way. But usually I like my artworks to look pretty vibrant. In the same vein, I'm changing the shadow colors on the clothes to make them more vibrant and intense to match the skin tone. Since we don't need to animate this illustration, we can choose the colors that make it the cutest. Digital tools are pretty convenient because they let us make adjustments at any time. The illustration is getting more vibrant, and those who are familiar with my usual art style may start to recognize my signature palette. I'm changing the colors one section at a time. Because the hair is so prominent, maybe it'll be easier to see if I make changes there. I made the hair a bit more vibrant, like this, but since I've also made the base color a little lighter, I've had to be careful not to make the shadows too dark or overall colors will become too dark. While keeping this in mind, adjust the colors until you're happy with them. Are you all done adjusting your colors? Let's check how it looked before the color adjustments. Quite a change, huh? I use the airbrush to add depth to the shading using blending modes like multiply or overlay, which intensify colors. I'm also doing some of that here. You should try it if you think it'll fit your illustration. I think we've added more depth to the illustration by doing this. At this point, I usually still have a lot of final touches to do on my illustrations, but since this tutorial is focusing on the coloring part, I'll stop here. I hope this condensed explanation of my process gave you a good glimpse into some of my artistic style. Now we'll work on effects, which are like the animation effects I talked about at the beginning. This part is quite similar to a cinematographer's job. By doing so, you can express more depth, atmosphere, temperature, and even scent. Now let's move on to these final touches. First, I create gradient materials like this. I guess anyone can make them. With this, I'll simulate the effect of light softly hitting from above. I use warm colors in yellowish tones, but I'll adjust the range and erase some parts too. If it covers too much of the face, it can take away from the character's eyes. Since this is an illustration, it's fine for some areas to get less light as long as the outcome doesn't look unnatural. Here's another layer for lightening. If you're drawing digitally, you can use the screen blending mode or any other mode that lets you add a brighter effect. This really helped us set the mood. Let's add a gradient to the shadow layers below in the same way. Since the colors on the top layer are warm, I'll use cool colors like deep blue or purple in the shadows and use blending modes like multiply or overlay to make the shadows stronger. You can try different things, but this is what I do. This has helped set the mood even more. It's become more anime-like, hasn't it? Lastly, we have to think of a way to guide the viewer's eye. Here's how I do it. The character's face is the part of this drawing I want to draw attention to the most, but in this illustration, the finger in the foreground competes for attention with the face. I solved this by adding a fake camera blur to the elements in the foreground in order to draw attention to the face. Like this. Instead of using the software's built-in feature to create the blur effect, I use customized brushes. I blur the things in the foreground like this. I've blurred a hand. Now how does it look? I think it adds to the sense of realism and atmosphere, and at the same time it guides the viewer's gaze to focus on the character's face. Also, since I blurred the hand, I also blurred the hair in the foreground just a little to make things coherent and draw more attention to the face. Using blur is also a way to gradually reduce the amount of visual information in the artwork. It's similar to deciding what information to include when shooting with a camera. I'm blurring the parts that are farther away from the face and the ones that are closer to the viewer. When using a camera, objects that are in the foreground or in the distance tend to be blurred, right? By blurring the parts that are away from the face, we can make the face stand out more. The human eye works similarly to a camera lens. For example, when we look at something, the further away it is, the less we can tell about it. Blurring is a way to convey this. It's pretty useful, so try it out. Now that I've made these adjustments, that's all there is to my anime style coloring version 2.0 technique. Normally, I would add effects in the background to make the scene more realistic, but this time we focus on the character. Now that I've covered the basic anime style coloring technique, which only includes form shadows, and my 2.0 approach, which incorporates my tips and tricks, can you see how significant the difference is? This is a comparison of the before and after. What do you think? As you can see, it was worth the effort. You can also see how the various effects I added slowly change the overall work at each stage. That concludes this tutorial. If there are parts that you'd like to replicate or that you found helpful, I'd be thrilled if you use those parts in your own art. You can share what you've learned from this tutorial and what you've made by adding a tag to your post. Thank you for following along. This was Ogipote. I mentioned a few things to keep in mind during the process, but please keep in mind that these are only some of the things I usually do. Most likely, only a small part of what you learned today can be applied to your own art process. But if you found some parts interesting or useful, it would be great if you could adapt them to your own art style. Drawing art that looks like mine won't automatically make you enjoy drawing more, so I hope you can look at these techniques as educational information and use them to make your own drawing journey more fun. I will be happy if this tutorial helps you in any way. Try it out, everyone. Now, back to the real timey. Thank you all once again for watching.
はい。皆さんいかがでしょうか？ How did you all like that video? オギポテさんから陰影とエフェクトを活かした単純にならないアニメ塗りの描き方をご説明いただきました。Here, Ogipote explained how to use shadows and other effects to create an anime-style art piece that isn't monotone. オギポテさんからみんなに一番伝えたいポイントやぜひ実践してほしいスキルがありますか？ Ogipote, is there any point that you would like to share with everyone or any skill that you'd like everyone to practice? どうぞ。
はい、皆さん、いかがだったでしょうか？少し難しかったですかね？大丈夫でしたか？アニメ塗りでも、特に影と影の知識っていうのは皆さん本来の画風でも流用できるのではないかと思います。とりあえず、訳お願いします。
すいません。途中でマイクを聞こえなくなってもう一回お願いします。
本当ですか？ごめんなさい。アニメ塗り、と言っていますけど、すみません。特に影と影の知識はですね、皆さん本来の画風でできるんじゃないかと個人的に思っています。はい。
はい。 So, how was it, everyone? Was it a bit difficult to follow? It may have been a bit difficult to follow, but I think if you have the basic concepts of shadows, then you should be able to create some good art. はい、どうぞ。僕の
動画内でも少し触れたんですけど、そもそもの構図作りとか、ラフの段階からここに影が落ちるかなと考えて描いてみるのが結構大事だったりします。
So I touched upon it in the lecture, but if you do think about the composition while you are creating your rough draft, then you should be able to figure out where to place the shadows.
今回は、紙やアクセサリーなどですね、キャラクターのパーツを中心に紹介していたんですけど、例えば木や傘とかの周りのオブジェとか、鳥や水とか、なんか飛んでいるものとか、何でも影は落ちると思います。
So I did touch on it when I was talking about how to do her hair parts, but when you're making your composition, just think about what is above. Is it an umbrella? Is there a bird? What's above? Whatever's above, that's going to make a shadow, right? どうぞ。
自分の描きたいモチーフを自由にね、積極的に盛り込んで、自由に影を表現してみるといいかもしれません。それでは続いてお願いいたします。
So it's really up to you. You're totally free. Anything you want to express, anything you want to do with shadows, that's up to you. どうぞ。
はい。じゃあ続いて。
はい。
動画中にね、実際に来ていた、英語の配信も含めて、来ていた質問に答えていこうと思います。よろしくお願いします。じゃあパスで。
Hi, okay, so we are going to take a look at some of the questions that we received from both the English chat and the Japanese chat. So, Ogipote 先生は基本的に日本語のチャットの質問を答えただと思うですから、英語チャットからピックアップしようかなと思います。はい。じゃあ、最初の質問は、この影は複数のレイヤーを使用しましたか？ Did you use multiple layers for your shadows?
はい。今回分かりやすく2つ、説明して2回に分けて実践していたんですけど、普段は、分けずに1つのレイヤーで描いていますが、皆さん分かりづらかったら全然2つに分けていただいて、で後で統合することができますので、やりやすいようにやっていただければと思います。
So I touched upon this a bit in the lecture, but this time I did use 2 layers for the shadows, so it was easier to follow, but usually I do everything on just 1 layer. But whatever's easiest for you is fine. It doesn't need to be multiple layers. It can be just 1 layer if you want. はい。OK。ありがとうございます。じゃあ次の質問に行きます。So let's go to the next question from the English chat now. Do you use a certain blending mode like multiply? 特定なブレンディングモードを使用していますか？例えば、乗算などのブレンディングモード。
はい。影に関してですかね。影に関しては、いいですか？
はい、おそらくそうですね。はい。
影に関しては、乗算は基本的に使いません。ちょっと英語で乗算は何ていうかわかんないんですけど、オーバーレイというモードが、アニメ塗りと相性がいい気がするので、私は対応しています。
So for shadows, if we're talking about blending shadows, I do not use multiply actually. I prefer to use overlay. I think that really suits my anime nudie, my anime style coloring technique. はい。
ただ今回のキャラクターの影に関しては、基本的な普通の通常レイヤーで、塗っています。はい。
So when we're drawing anime characters, I just do everything on a normal layer basically. はい。はい、ありがとうございます。はい、じゃあ続いていきますね。What happens if the two types of shadows intersect? もし2つの種類の影が交差した場合、どのようなこと起こりますか？
はい。日本語の方ではチャットで答えたんですけど、重なった部分を濃くするということは僕は特にはやっていません。というのもアニメ塗りの良さは、できるだけシンプルに一色で表現することが、デザイン的で素敵だと個人的に思っているからです。
So, He actually answered this in the Japanese chat as well. The same question came up. So typically, if two shadows would intersect, then you would make it darker, but Ogipote sensei does not do that. One of the points of anime style coloring is that it's supposed to be simple. So we're just going to do everything like very simply. Well, one color, choose either or is fine. はい。
はい、しかし、皆さん好みがあると思いますんで、私の絵では濃くしたいという、重なってる部分を濃くしたいっていうのがあれば、そこは自由なんで試してみて、判断してみるといいかもしれません。
But of course, what I'm telling you is just what I do. You're all free to choose whatever you want. If you think that making the shadows darker would suit the art that you made, then go for it. That'll work. はい。ありがとうございます。はい。ありがとうございます。はい。じゃあ次は、紙についての質問ですね。How do you go about adding gradients to the shadows for soft lighting changes, say in the hair? 紙のようなソフトな光の変化にグラデーションを追加する際、どのようにお勧めしていますか？
はい。今回は、バイカラー、紙2色くっきり分かれてたんですけど、グラデーションを追加するときも、今回と同様に、定山のレイヤーを使っています。先ほど影で定山は濁りやすいと言ったんですけど、色をのせるときは定山のレイヤーが、勝手が良かったりします。
So this time we did have a character that had bi-color hair. There were two very clear different colors in her hair. So actually, when I am adding highlights, I do like to use multiply. It does tend to make things a little bit muddier. So that does work when we're having soft lighting changes. はい。ありがとうございます。はい。じゃあ次の質問に行きます。Do you use references for the poses? ポーズには参考資料を使用しますか？
はい。基本的に私は参考資料は使用しませんが、慣れないうちは、私の場合ですと、実写の写真集や、雑誌などを使用していました。
Currently, I do not use any references, but if you are getting used to drawing, what I did is I would look at photos of real people. I would buy photo books of real actresses, I guess, or real people, or I'd look at photos in magazines, and I would use those as a reference when I was starting out. はい。
なぜイラスト本ではなく、その実写なのかというと、もうイラストという時点で描いてらっしゃる作者さんの意図が少し入ってしまったり、デフォルメが入ってしまったりしているケースがあるからで、より自由に、そこから発展させられるのが実写だと思っているからです。
So the reason that I chose to look at photos over other artists' illustrations or artwork is because when you are looking at another artist's artwork, they're going to have their own thing that they're doing. They're going to have their own kind of quirks. So if I'm looking at real photos, then when I turn my, when I'm looking at it and turn it into a piece of art, then I'm free to do whatever I want because I'm going from photo to art. はい。
次お願いします。
はい。じゃあ次の英語質問は、はい。いきますね。Speaking of coloring, what are the main methods you recommend for rendering the eyes or giving them depth? はい、色彩に関して言えば、目のレンダリングに奥行きを与えるため、主に、ごめん。少々お待ちください。はい、もう一回読み上げますね。
はい。
色彩に関して言えば、目のレンダリングや奥行きに与えるため、主にスイッチを方法は何ですか？
まあ簡単にあれですよね、目の立体感をどうやったら出せるかっていう質問だと思うんですけど。
そういう、すみません、多分自動翻訳な気がします。すみません。はい。
OK です。目に関しては、凸レンズの構造に、ゼリー状の凸レンズになっている構造になってるんですよ。そこの構造をよく研究してみて、で、一言で言ってしまうと、私は発光モードという、リニアモードかな。光るようなレイヤーモードで最後に、ハイライトを乗せることで、透明感、立体感を出したりしています。
はい。 So I touched on this in the lecture as well, but people's eyes do have kind of like a jelly layer to them. So I really studied this and tried to figure out how I can make this work in illustration. And there's a mode called linear mode that I use to add highlights, and that helps with depth in the eyes. はい、ありがとうございます。
はい。
はい。OK。はい。じゃあ次は線画についての質問です。Do you have any advice on keeping line art clean? ラインアートをきれいにするためにアドバイスはありますか？
はい。これは簡単なアドバイスなんですけど、多分ソフトに手ブレ補正モードっていうのがあると思うんですよ。手ブレ補正の数値を上げて私は純粋に書いております。はい。
So my advice is actually very simple. There should be a mode in Photoshop where if you're drawing with your hand, it's going to kind of make the lines like very smooth. So I just turn that up kind of high, so my like shaking of my hands doesn't come out in the line art, so the lines look very clean. はい、ありがとうございます。じゃあ次の質問に行きます。
はい。
How can I choose the color for the extra details of the hair? 髪についての質問です。髪の追加のディテールのための色はどんなように選べば良いでしょうか？
はい。髪の色に関してですか。まあ、特にその髪のベースカラーの純粋に暗くて濃い色を選べばいいと思うんですけど、何か違和感があったら、最後に後で調整をして、他とのバランスを見ればいいと思うので、これコツというのはなくて、見た感じのイメージで調整してみるとっていう、ちょっとすいません。雑な回答にはなっちゃうんですけど、いかがでしょうか？
Well, it's kind of just basic advice maybe, but if we're choosing a dark color for the hair, then just add on something that would suit it, and then in the end we are able to kind of adjust the colors in Photoshop, right? So whatever you do, you can just adjust it until it looks good, but just try to choose a complementary color. はい、ありがとうございます。
ちょっと今ので加えていいですか？
はい、どうぞ、もちろんです。
影の色は先ほど申した通りなんですけど、意外とそのベースカラーとかハイライトとかの色をちょっと調整したりすると影とのバランスが取れて、いい髪色、味が出たりすることがあります。これで終わりです。
So I want to add on one other thing. If you do, I showed you in the lecture how to add on highlights, but if we are using both the highlights and the shadows, then we should be able to create some beautiful hair. はい、ありがとうございます。じゃあ、最後の質問です。
はい。
はい、so this is the final question. It's about hair again. もう一回髪の質問があります。みんなやっぱ気になりましたよね。はい。Any tips to give more volume to the hair while shading? 髪にボリューム感を与えるためのシェーディングのコツはありますか？
ボリューム感は、
ボリューム。
はい、影というよりは線画の時点であまり細くなったりしないことですね。紙って基本的に頭皮にすみません、一回訳してもらいましょうか。影とかは関係なく線画の時点で変わってきます。
Okay, so actually for volume, that has nothing to do with shadowing. That's something that you're going to have to think about when you're in the line art stage. どうぞ。
はい。頭皮に近いほど毛量は多くなるんで、先っちょに行くほど、髪の先端に行くほど多くなるってことは基本的にはないんですよ。それを意識して太さを先端に行ったら急に太くなるとかを意識しないように、逆に言うと途中で急に細くなったりとか、そういうのを意識しない、そういうことにならないように意識するとバランスが取れた毛量を描けるかもしれません。
So if you are thinking about the hair becoming thinner, just don't really think about that. Think about how our hair becomes like more voluminous around the scalp. And then if we're thinking about how to draw it a bit more, not thin, but draw it a bit thicker, then that should help you with creating volume in the hair. はい。ありがとうございます。はい。じゃあそれは、質問コーナーはそれで以上ですよね。
はい、大丈夫ですか？
はい。 はい、ありがとうございます。はい、お答えできなかった皆さんは申し訳ありませんが、ここまでとさせていただきます。So I'm sorry we couldn't answer all of the questions, but we are going to be ending the Q&A session now. それでは作成いただくイラストのテーマについてご説明します。So we are going to explain how to go about submitting your work. おぎぼてさんお願いします。テーマの説明お願いします。
はい。皆さんに今週制作いただくのは、ズバリ、アイアンマウスさんのファンアートになります。講義で学んだ技法を使いながら、自由に描いてみましょう。
Okay, so we are going to be asking you to draw fan art of Iron Mouse. Please use the techniques you learned during the lecture and draw whatever you want. どうぞ。
参加登録特典で配布した私の線が、概要欄にあると思います。を使用してピクシブに投稿していただいてももちろん構いませんけど、せっかくなのでですね、試してみたい方にはぜひ0からご自身でアイアンマウスさんのファンアートを描いていただくといいと思います。
Okay, so as you know, Ogipote's line art is in the description below, and of course, you're free to color that in, use the shadows, and upload that to Pixiv. But if you want to create your own fan art from scratch, of course, that is absolutely fine as well. はい、ありがとうございます。じゃあ、ここで作品投稿の方法を説明させていただきます。So next, we're going to explain how to go about submitting your artwork. Pixiv に投稿する際には指定のタグを忘れずにつけてご投稿ください。タグは Drawfest4 Ogipote です。コピペが必要な方は YouTube の概要欄にも記載していますので、そちらをお使いください。So please practice the techniques explained in the program on your works and post it to Pixiv with the hashtag Drawfest4 underbar. The hashtag is Drawfest4 Ogipote. Please do not forget to add this tag. If you'd prefer to copy and paste it, please use the tag provided in the description below here on YouTube. はい、じゃあ投稿期間ですよね。投稿期間はフィードバックで前日の6月16日までに投稿された作品が選考の対象となります。Only submissions received by Friday, June 16th, Japan time, the day before feedback day, will be eligible for the competition. 作品投稿に関しては6月1日から6月30日まで投稿ページが設けておりますが、選考対象になるのは6月16日までの投稿作品に限ります。So, although we have a dedicated submission page open from June 1st through June 30th, let me stress that only submissions received by Friday, June 16th, Japan time, will be considered eligible for prize selection. はい、じゃあルールに行きますね。So I'm going to talk about the rules now. So, ルールとしてはドローフェス4のプログラムに関連する作品であること、投稿期間内のもの、指定のタグがついた状況で投稿されているものに限らせていただきます。詳細については概要欄にある Pixiv の投稿企画ページをご覧ください。So submitted works must be related to the Drawfest4 program, and they must be entered within the submission period with the specified tags attached. For more details, please refer to the contest outline section on the Pixiv submission page. Okay, now we're going to talk about next week's feedback day. So feedback day の説明をしますね。来週の、番組です。はい。オギポテさんのフィードバックデーは来週の6月17日土曜日12時から開催します。Ogipote's feedback day will be taking place on Saturday, June 17th at 12 p.m. Japan Standard Time. フィードバックデーでは今回にお伝えしたテーマでご投稿いただきました作品の紹介や改善点などのアドバイスや添削を行います。On feedback day, he will be looking at the artwork that was posted with today's theme in mind and be talking about them on stream and give some advice on how they could be improved. で、フィードバックデーはなんと特別なゲストとしてアイアンマウスさんご本人もお越しいただけるそうです。So on feedback day, Iron Mouse herself will be making an appearance. オギポテさんとアイアンマウスさんにより本プログラムの受賞作品を選んでいただきます。So Ogipote and Iron Mouse will each be choosing a winner for this program. はい。じゃあ、商品の紹介をしますね。So I'm going to talk a little bit about the prizes now. 最優勝は受賞された方にはワコム液晶ペンタブレット13が贈呈されます。So the winner will receive a Wacom One pen display 13-inch as a prize. また、オギポテ賞もございます。There's also going to be a special オギポテ prize. 受賞された方にはオギポテサイン入り愛嬌オギポテ作品集が贈呈されます。So the winner will receive a signed copy of Aikyo Ogipote's Artbook. Yay! It's very beautiful. すごく素敵な表紙です。中身も素敵です。it's really cool. So, はい。本日のプログラムは来週のフィードバックデーまで同じ URL でアーカイブ視聴ができます。絵の書いている途中でわからなくなったときはいつでも振り返ってみてください。So this program is going to be archived at this exact same URL until next week's feedback day. If you get lost in the process along the way, you can always look back at the video again. それでは皆さんふるってご参加をお願いします。So we are looking forward to your participation. はい。オギポテさん。本日、オギポテとアニメ塗り会で Vshojo アイアンマウスを描こうというテーマでお話しいただきましたが、改めていかがでしょうか。So, Ogipote, today you spoke with us about how to draw Vshojo's Iron Mouse with Ogipote's anime style coloring version 2.0. Any final thoughts? どうぞ。
はい。まずはメラニーさん、ありがとう。お疲れ様でございました。
ありがとうございます。
はい。改めまして、皆様、ご清聴ありがとうございました。皆さん、リアルタイムでたくさんリアクションしてくださって、本当にイラストが好きで、真剣に取り組んでるんだなと、今回、感心いたしました。はい。
So, yeah, thank you everybody for following along with me. It was really exciting to see your reactions in real time, and I really felt that you all love art so much. はい、ありがとうございます。はい、どうぞ。
まだ全然喋ってもいいですかね。
どうぞ、もちろん。
はい。私もその姿勢をですね、見習って、もっといろんな技法をね、身につけて、新たなね、講義や制作とかでお見せしていければとね、とてもアグレッシブな気持ちになれました。はい。
So, what was really impressed upon me is that I want to try my best to improve more so I can create more lectures for you and hopefully I can, learn some more new things myself and teach you guys that as well.
はい。それでは来週皆様のエネルギッシュな作品の数々をですね見られることを楽しみにお待ちしております。それではありがとうございました。
So I am really looking forward to next week and seeing how everything turned out. Thank you very much. はい、ありがとうございました。そう、スタディデー最後のプログラムはオギポテとアニメ塗り会で Vshojo アイアンマウスを描こうを見送りしました。So that's a wrap for Drawfest4's last program, or Drawfest4's Study Days last program. Let's draw Vshojo's Iron Mouse with Ogipote's anime style coloring version 2.0. Ogipote さん、ありがとうございました。
はい、ありがとうございました。
はい、それではまた来週。See you guys next week. Bye.